Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Elias and Sabrina marked their third wedding anniversary on an ordinary Tuesday in October. They lived in a two-bedroom apartment with a view of the city's skyline, the kind of place that felt like a promise, perfect for a young couple building a life from the ground up. Elias worked as a financial analyst. He had a stable routine, a calm demeanor, and he appreciated the quiet predictability that came with being in a committed relationship. Sabrina was a graphic designer. Creative, outgoing, but always, in his experience, balanced. Of course, they had their differences. But they worked. They were a team, until Kendra entered the picture. Or rather, until Kendra's marriage fell apart. Kendra had been Sabrina's friend since college. They had bonded over a grueling design project and stayed in touch over the years, their friendship punctuated by occasional lunches and long coffee dates. Kendra's divorce was quick, and it was bitter. Her husband had cheated, and she'd found out in the worst possible way, through a string of messages he'd carelessly left open on his computer. Sabrina was devastated for her friend. She spent days on the phone with her, offering a shoulder to cry on, listening to endless, circular rants about betrayal and disillusionment. Elias completely understood. He even encouraged Sabrina to be there for Kendra. After all, that's what friends do during tough times. The problem started when that support turned into something entirely different. Kendra decided the best way to get over her divorce was to rediscover herself. That meant going out to clubs, meeting new people, and embracing the wild freedom she felt she'd lost during her marriage. And Sabrina, in a gesture of profound solidarity, decided to join her on this journey. The first time Sabrina said she was going out with Kendra, Elias thought nothing of it. It was a Friday night. She deserved to have some fun, to help her friend smile again. He stayed home, watched a few episodes of a show he'd been following, and waited for her to come back. Sabrina got home around 2:00 the morning. Elias woke up to the sound of the key in the lock and asked how it went. She was buzzing with excitement, telling him they'd gone to a new club downtown. The music had been great. Kendra seemed to be doing better. So far, so good. But the second outing happened the following Tuesday, then again on Thursday, and then again on Saturday. In less than 3 weeks, what was supposed to be occasional support had hardened into a fixed routine. Sabrina was going out with Kendra at least 4 times a week, always coming home late, always with the same justification. She needs me right now, Elias. You get it, right? Elias tried to understand. He really, truly did. But something started to gnaw at him when he saw her social media posts. Sabrina had always been active on Instagram, but the photos she began posting were different. Dancing way too close to unfamiliar men. Drinks in hand, wide, almost manic smiles. One caption simply read, "Living my best life." Elias felt a tightness in his chest, a cold knot forming in his stomach when he saw a particular video. Sabrina was on a dance floor, grinding against a man he'd never seen before. The man's hands were firmly on her waist. The music was a deafening pulse. The lights flashed, catching the sweat on their skin. And Kendra was filming it all, laughing, clearly thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. He waited for her to get home that night. It was 3:30 a.m. when Sabrina finally opened the door. Elias was awake, sitting on the couch in the dark, his phone in his hand. She stumbled in, a cloud of alcohol and mixed perfume trailing behind her. "We need to talk," Elias said, his voice quiet but firm. Sabrina stopped, took off her high heels, and looked at him with an expression he knew all too well. It was the look that said she already knew what was coming, and was already preparing her defense. "About what?" she asked, feigning an innocence that felt like a slap in the face. "About this," he said, gesturing vaguely to the air around her. "About how you've been acting. About these constant outings. About the posts you're putting up." Sabrina sighed, a long, theatrical sound. She tossed her bag onto the couch and crossed her arms. "Elias, seriously? Are you really starting this now? Sabrina, you're dancing with other men in a way that makes me uncomfortable, and everyone is seeing it on your social media." She rolled her eyes. The dismissal was so potent it was almost physical. "Uncomfortable? Elias, I'm just dancing. It's just fun. You're being insecure." The word, insecure, it hurt more than Elias expected. He took a deep breath, fighting to keep his voice even. "I'm being honest about how I feel. If you were dancing like that with me, it would be one thing. But they're strangers, Sabrina. Oh, my God, Elias, do you even hear yourself? Her voice dripped with condescension. You're trying to control me. I'm asking for respect, he countered, his own voice rising slightly. I'm asking you to consider how this makes your husband feel. Sabrina let out a short, sarcastic laugh. It was a sound he'd never heard from her before. You know what your problem is, Elias? Toxic masculinity. That's exactly what you're showing right now. You want to trap me, control me, dictate what I can or can't do. It's pathetic. Elias was silent for a few seconds, the accusation hanging in the air between them, thick and poisonous. Toxic masculinity. She'd really thrown that term at him, like a weapon designed to shut down any discussion, to invalidate any feeling he dared to express. So, that's it, he said, his voice flat. Any concern I have is just toxic masculinity? If the shoe fits, Sabrina replied, grabbing her bag and heading toward the bedroom. The conversation was over. That was the first of many arguments, and they all ended the same way, with Sabrina dismissing his feeling, with Sabrina playing the victim. He tried different approaches. He tried being gentle. He tried being direct. He tried being more understanding. But the result was always the same. Sabrina kept going out, kept posting, and kept insisting that Elias was the problem. It was on a Thursday night, after yet another frustrating, circular argument, that Elias made a decision. A switch flipped inside him. If Sabrina thought dancing intimately with strangers was completely normal and acceptable in a relationship, then he needed to test that logic. He needed to show her, in practical terms, how absurd it sounded. Elias grabbed his phone and, with a strange sense of detachment, downloaded a dating app. He created a simple profile, uploaded a few recent photos, and filled in the basic information. He made it clear in his profile that he was married, but exploring options. The idea wasn't to cheat. The idea was to provoke a reaction. To make Sabrina understand that if her behavior was acceptable, then so was his. In less than 2 hours, his phone was buzzing. Dozens of messages. Women who were interested, curious, some even flirting openly. He replied to a few, keeping the conversations light and non-committal. But one message in particular caught his attention. It was from Eliza, the same Eliza who was close friends with Sabrina. The same Eliza who'd been at some of those club outings. The same Eliza who always commented on Sabrina's posts with fire emojis and words of encouragement like, "Yes, Queen." Her message read, "Hey Elias, what a surprise to see you on here. Everything okay with you too?" Elias stared at the message for a long time. Eliza knew he was married to Sabrina. They were supposed to be friends. And yet, here she was, on a dating app, messaging him. It was so hypocritical. It was almost comical. He replied, "Hey, Eliza, all good. Just trying out this whole meeting new people thing, you know." Her reply came back instantly. "Oh, I get it. Things with Sabrina? You could say that. Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here." Elias left the conversation there. He didn't need to say another word. He knew it would eventually get back to Sabrina. And he was right. 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, Sabrina stormed into the apartment like a hurricane. She'd just had lunch with Eliza and a few other friends, and apparently, news of Elias's profile was already circulating. She threw her bag on the kitchen table, the sound echoing in the tense silence. She marched straight to the spare bedroom where Elias was working on his laptop. "You're on a dating app," she yelled, holding her phone up like it was criminal evidence. Elias calmly closed his laptop and looked at her. "I am." "Oh. How dare you? How dare you do this to me?" "Do what, exactly?" he asked, his voice steady. "Meet new people? Interact with other women? I thought that was normal. You yourself said I was being insecure for being bothered by your dancing." Sabrina opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, sputtering. This is completely different." "How?" he pressed, standing up to face her. "Explain it to me, Sabrina. Because from my perspective, you're being a hypocrite." I was dancing. You're literally cheating." "Cheating?" Elias let out a humorless laugh. "You danced pressed up against other men, let them put their hands on you, and then posted it all over social media for the entire world to see. And when I told you it bothered me, you called me insecure and controlling. But now that I'm doing something equivalent, suddenly it's cheating? Equivalent? Elias, You're talking to other women on a dating app. And you were letting other men put their hands on your body while dancing. How is that different?" Sabrina was shaking with anger, her face flushed. "You're a miserable bastard, and you're a hypocrite," he shot back. "But you know what's funny? Eliza is on the app, too, and she messaged me. Your friend, Sabrina, the one who was there with you at all those clubs, cheering you on." Sabrina's face went from red to pale. She was speechless. Elias knew he'd hit a crucial point. He continued, his voice low and cutting. "If you think what I'm doing is cheating, then you need to admit that what you were doing was wrong, too. You're applying a double standard, and you know it." Her eyes welled up with tears of rage. "I hate you. You hate that I'm showing you the truth." He corrected her. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. Elias heard her call someone, probably Kendra, and start venting loudly. He could make out fragments of the conversation. "He's on an app." "Yeah, a dating app." I know, he's trash." But Elias was strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was in control of the situation. He had turned the tables using the same twisted logic Sabrina had been applying to him. And now, she was facing the cognitive dissonance it created. What Elias hoped for was that this would lead to a real conversation, one where they could finally lay everything on the table and sort things out like adults. But the opposite happened. 3 days later, Sabrina created her own, very public profile on a dating app. She posted provocative photos, added a bio that read, "In an open relationship, living with no regrets," and started openly interacting with other men. Worse still, she began showing it to Elias, as if it were some kind of trophy from a war he didn't even want to fight. "Look at this," she said during a tense, silent dinner, shoving her phone in his face. 50 matches in 2 hours. Seems I'm way more popular than you." Elias looked at the screen, then at her face, searching for the woman he had married. He couldn't find her. "Do you really think this is going to fix anything? It fixes it for me. If you can do it, so can I. Sabrina, when I did this, it was to show you how absurd your logic was. You're doing this because..." "Why? For revenge?" "I'm doing it because I can," she snapped. "Because I'm free. And if you have a problem with that, then you're the insecure one here." Things spiraled completely out of control when Sabrina decided to make it all public. She posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "In an open relationship and have never felt freer. Number no regrets, number open marriage." The post showed her smiling, phone in hand, displaying the dating app interface. Her friends flooded the comments. Kendra, of course, commented first, "That's the spirit. You deserve it all, girl." Another friend added, "Traditional relationships are outdated anyway. You're absolutely right." But there were also comments from people who knew them as a couple and were utterly confused. Elias's cousin asked, "Wait, you're in an open relationship? Since when?" A coworker of Sabrina's commented, Is this serious?" Elias's phone started blowing up with messages from friends and family asking what was going on. He had to explain, over and over, that it was a complicated situation, that they were having problems. Some offered support, others judged, and some simply disappeared. Uncomfortable with all the drama, the apartment became a silent battlefield. Elias and Sabrina barely spoke. When they crossed paths in the kitchen or the living room, there were only cold stares and cutting remarks. She spent even more time away from home, now openly saying she was seeing other people. Elias buried himself in work, staying extra hours at the office just to avoid being at home. Sabrina's friends started visiting the apartment more often. They began treating the place like a sorority house, making passive-aggressive comments about Elias, always loud enough for him to hear. "Men are all the same," one of them said once while Elias was getting water from the fridge. "They want freedom for themselves, but try to control women." Elias simply ignored it. He knew responding would only make things worse. But inside, he was exhausted, tired of the drama, tired of the hypocrisy, tired of living in a toxic environment where he was constantly painted as the villain. Then, on a Tuesday night, while Elias was lying on the couch because Sabrina had locked their bedroom door, he realized something fundamental. This relationship was over. They were just living among the wreckage, dragging out the inevitable. And the longer they waited, the more painful and complicated it would become. Elias was at work when he got the message from Milo. He knew Milo from the building, a neighbor who lived 3 floors down. They'd exchanged greetings in the elevator, chatted briefly about the local football team, but had never developed a close friendship. So when the notification popped up on his phone with Milo's name, Elias was surprised. The message read, "Dude, sorry I have to show you this, but I thought you should know." Below the message was an attached video file. With a sense of dread, Elias opened the file. What he saw made his stomach turn. It was Sabrina, at a bar he recognized as being 2 blocks from their apartment. She was sitting on a high stool, talking to a man with dark hair and a blue dress shirt. He recognized the man as Ronan, one of the new faces from her social media. They were laughing. She was touching his arm intimately. And then, after a few seconds, they kissed. A long, deliberate kiss, with no hesitation. Elias watched the video 3 times, each time hoping to see something different, some angle that would prove it was a misunderstanding. But it was undeniable. Sabrina was kissing another man in a public bar, and Milo had filmed the whole thing. He replied to Milo, "Thanks for letting me know." Milo sent another message, "If you need anything, just say the word. I know things must be rough right now." Elias thanked him again and put his phone away. He sat at his desk for a few minutes, staring at his computer screen without really seeing anything. The anger he expected to feel took a while to come. Instead, there was something colder, more calculated, an absolute, chilling clarity about what needed to be done. He opened a new browser tab and started researching rental laws in their state. The apartment was only in his name. The lease had only Elias's signature. Sabrina had never been officially added, a step he'd planned to take but never got around to because of pure procrastination. Now, that procrastination had become an advantage. According to the law, he had the right to ask anyone living in the apartment but not on the lease to leave, as long as he provided a formal 30-day notice. Elias saved all the relevant information. At the end of his workday, he stopped by a law office on his way home. The lawyer who met with him listened carefully to the situation. Elias showed him the lease, explained that Sabrina had been living with him but that the relationship had effectively ended, and that he wanted to formally request her departure. "It's pretty straightforward," the lawyer said. "You have the legal right. I'll prepare the document for you. Just understand that she might contest it, but given that the lease is only in your name, the law is on your side." How long will it take?" "I can have the document ready by tomorrow morning. You'll need to deliver it in person or through a process server. I recommend the process server for official documentation." Elias agreed to everything. He paid the initial fee and left the office with a strange sense of grim determination. When he got home that night, Sabrina was in the living room with Kendra. They were watching some reality show and laughing loudly. Elias walked right past them, went into the bedroom which Sabrina had finally unlocked, grabbed some clothes, and returned to the living room. "I'll sleep in the guest room," he said, more to himself than to them. Sabrina barely glanced in his direction. Whatever. The next day, the lawyer called to say the document was ready. Elias left work early, picked up the legal notice, and hired a process server to make the formal delivery. He wanted everything done properly, with no loopholes. The delivery happened on a Friday night. Elias was home when the process server knocked on the door. Sabrina answered, confused by the uniformed man's presence. "Sabrina Morrison?" the server asked. "Yes, that's me. I have a legal notice for you." He handed her the sealed envelope. Sabrina took it, looked at Elias standing in the hallway, and opened the document right there. Elias watched the exact moment she understood what she was reading. Her face shifted from confusion to shock, then to pure, unadulterated fury. "You're evicting me. You're evicting me? I'm formally requesting that you vacate the apartment in 30 days, Elias stated calmly. "The lease is only in my name, and you're entitled to that period to find another place." "You're a miserable bastard. How could you do this?" The process server, used to this kind of reaction, said professionally, "Ma'am, the notice has been served. You have 30 days from today." He turned and left. Sabrina stood there, holding the paper with trembling hands. "You really think you're going to get away with this?" "I already have," Elias said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The document is legal. You have 30 days. I live here, and you'll keep living here for another 30 days. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else." Sabrina grabbed her phone and immediately called Kendra, explaining the situation at the top of her lungs. Elias heard Kendra's equally outraged voice on the other end and decided he'd heard enough. He went to the guest room and locked the door. The following days were an emotional roller coaster. Sabrina alternated between different strategies. Sometimes, she tried being nice. She'd cook his favorite dinner, leave sweet notes around the house, even attempt to start conversations about fixing things. Elias saw right through all of it. He'd seen the video. He knew it was manipulation, a last, desperate attempt to avoid consequences. Other times, she was hostile. She'd accidentally break dishes, throw his clothes on the floor, or scream in the middle of the night just to wake him up. But Elias stayed firm. He documented every incident, took photos of any damage she caused, and kept a detailed record. The situation escalated when Sabrina decided to throw a party in the apartment. It was a Thursday. Elias had just gotten home from work when he found the living room full of people he'd never seen before. Loud music blared from speakers. Drinks were everywhere. People were smoking on the balcony. Sabrina was right in the middle of it all, laughing, clearly drunk. Elias recognized a few faces. Ronan, the guy from the video, another man named Finn, who frequently commented on her posts. Kendra, of course, was there too. What's going on here? Elias had to shout over the music. Sabrina turned to him with a malicious smile. I'm enjoying my home while I still can. Got a problem with that? Sabrina, it's a work night. Turn the music off. Or what? You're going to evict me. Oh wait, she sneered, and the people around her laughed. You already are. Elias looked around and realized arguing would be pointless. He grabbed his phone and recorded a video of the mess, the empty bottles, the overflowing ashtrays, the stains on the couch. Then he went to the guest room and called the building's landlord, explaining the situation and making it clear the party had been Sabrina's idea, without his consent. The party lasted until 3 a.m. When it finally ended, the apartment was trashed. Broken glasses, food stomped into the carpet, a fresh burn mark on the coffee table where someone had left a lit cigarette. Elias took photos of everything. The next morning, he emailed Sabrina with all the evidence attached. The subject line read, "Damages." The email said simply, "You will be held financially responsible for all repairs." Her reply was a flood of profanities and empty threats. Sabrina's mother, Lorraine, showed up a week later. She was a woman in her 52s, always well put together, always with a strong opinion about everything. She walked right into the apartment without being invited. "Elias, we need to talk about this ridiculous situation." "Hi, Lorraine. There's nothing to discuss. The decision's been made. You're kicking my daughter out of her home. How do you expect me to stay quiet about this?" "Lorraine, this apartment is in my name. The lease is mine. Sabrina has 30 days to find another place, and I am honoring that period." She's devastated. She can barely sleep. She was devastated enough to throw a party here and cause thousands of dollars in damages, Elias said, his voice like ice. She was devastated enough to kiss another man in a bar. So, excuse me if I question how much she's really suffering. Lorraine turned red. "How dare you talk about my daughter like that? I'm stating the truth. And if you came here to convince me to change my mind, you're wasting your time. You'll regret this, Elias," she hissed. "My daughter will move on and find someone who truly values her, and you'll be left alone, realizing you lost the best thing you ever had." Elias took a deep breath. "If that's the best thing I've ever had, then I'm looking forward to what comes next." Lorraine slammed the door on her way out. Meanwhile, at work, Elias began noticing that the situation was affecting his professional reputation. A colleague named Gia, who happened to be friends with one of Sabrina's friends, started spreading rumors. Elias overheard snippets of conversations, noticed strange looks, and finally a close friend came to him. "Dude, Gia is telling people you emotionally abused your wife, that you controlled her, and are now using the apartment to manipulate her." Elias felt his blood boil. He scheduled a meeting with Human Resources, calmly explained his personal situation, and informed them that an employee was spreading malicious and false information about him. 2 days later, Gia was called in for a formal meeting and received an official warning that would stay on her record. The damage was done, but Elias chose to focus on what he could control. The 30 days somehow felt both fast and painfully slow. Sabrina made sure every day was difficult, but Elias stayed firm. He counted the days on the calendar, reminding himself this was temporary. That soon, he would have his space back, his peace back, his life back. On the 29th day, Sabrina was still packing. Elias worried she'd try to drag things out. But on the final morning, a moving truck pulled up in front of the building. Sabrina, Kendra, Ronan, and Finn loaded her boxes and furniture. When they finished, Sabrina stood in the doorway, looking at Elias one last time. Tears filled her eyes, but he had seen that trick before. She waited for him to say something, to offer one last chance. He remained silent. "You'll regret this," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I've regretted a lot of things, Sabrina," he replied, his own voice steady and clear. "But letting you go will never be one of them." She walked out and closed the door. Elias heard her footsteps fading down the hallway, the ding of the elevator, and then silence. He stood there, in the middle of the half-empty apartment, and for the first time in months, he took a deep breath without feeling a crushing weight on his chest. The divorce was surprisingly smooth. 6 months after Sabrina moved out, it was officially finalized. With that closure came something unexpected, a deep, profound sense of relief. Elias realized he'd spent months living in a state of constant tension, always bracing for the next explosion, the next accusation. Now, with Sabrina out of his life, he could finally relax. He started rebuilding. He redecorated the apartment, replacing furniture that reminded him of her. He painted the walls a different color. He returned to things he'd enjoyed but had set aside, reading, morning runs, watching movies she'd hated. A few months later, he ran into Sabrina by chance at a cafe. She was with a guy he recognized from her social media photos. They locked eyes, and he gave a polite nod. To his surprise, she got up and came over to his table. "Hi," she said, her voice softer than he remembered. "Hi, Sabrina. How are you?" "I'm good. And you?" "I'm good too." An awkward silence followed. Then she said, "Look, I know things ended badly, and I wanted to say that. I get it now. Some of the things you said, they made sense. I was just too lost back then to see it." Elias nodded slowly. "I appreciate you saying that. Are you happy?" she asked. "I am," he said honestly. "Happier than I've been in a long time." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I'm glad for you." She went back to her table, and Elias finished his coffee. Seeing her again had been the final confirmation that he'd made the right choice. Sometime later, he ran into Lorraine, Sabrina's mother, at a grocery store. "Elias," she said, approaching him with an embarrassed look, "I wanted to apologize for how I acted. I was protecting my daughter, but I said things that weren't fair." "Sabrina." She told me more about what really happened. "I realize now you were just trying to protect yourself." Elias was surprised. "I appreciate that, Lorraine." Oh, that brief conversation brought another kind of closure. Elias had learned deep lessons from the experience. He learned that setting boundaries in a relationship is essential, and that accepting less than you deserve is a form of self-betrayal. He learned that emotional manipulation can come in many disguises, and that recognizing the patterns is the first step toward breaking free. Most importantly, he learned that respecting yourself is fundamental. For too long, he'd let Sabrina dictate the terms of their relationship, invalidate his feelings, and make him question his own sanity. But when he finally took a stand, when he decided his mental peace mattered more than keeping up appearances, everything changed. Elias understood that loving someone should never mean losing yourself, that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and clear boundaries, and that when someone consistently disrespects those boundaries, the only healthy choice is to walk away. He looked at his life now and saw possibilities instead of obligations. He saw freedom instead of confinement. He saw hope instead of despair, and he knew, with every fiber of his being, that he had made the right choice. He had chosen himself when he needed to most, and that choice, as difficult as it had been, had saved his life. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.